It was very cool to be asked to talk on this bill, and when I first looked at the list of the people who were doing the stuff, I thought to myself, okay, why have I been asked? I mean, what's my connection? First of all, I should say I'm part of a group of artists called Greyworld. We make public art in urban spaces, and most of our work is permanently installed in different parts of the city. And as I say, I was looking at this list and I was thinking, okay, what have I got to offer here? For many, many years, Greyworld really wanted to intervene in urban spaces in any way we could, and we found that sound was one of those tools, one of those weapons that was really underused in trying to create the kind of artworks that we wanted to make. And so I'm going to talk today about public art. I'm going to talk about sound and public art. I'm going to talk about, I suppose, not controversially really, but the difference between the kind of things that the other speakers are going to speak about and the way in which they can be actually physically embedded into urban space. I'll give you a little story. So I'm actually Professor of Public Art at Goldsmiths. And one of the nice things about that is I get to travel a lot and meet lots of other departments, lots of other digital departments, and see what kind of works that they're doing, and see what they're doing. And one thing that you can find out is people are doing incredible stuff. They're writing incredible apps. They're doing really interesting and very fascinating stuff. What's really interesting is when you talk to them, and I explain to them what I do, they call my work off-screen. Now, it just makes me laugh. What they're really talking about there, I think, is reality. So, you know, to them, the world is, there's this, and then there's everything else, and that's just off-screen. I mean, it's just fine. And I absolutely love this. So my talk really today is about reality. It's about like, the thing that you can hold, the thing that you can touch, the thing that you can interact with, that you can have some kind of frictional, reaction to. So, okay, that's the preamble. The second thing to say, really, is as a group of artists, our work is in urban spaces, and really most of the people who are interacting with our work or playing with our work have not gone about going to see art. Most of them are not interested. I mean, most of them are on their way to buy a can of beans from the supermarket, or meet grandma or catch a bus. So that really, again, has dictated very much the kind of work we've made. And a lot of our early stuff really needed to look at the way that cities functioned and try to play with them. As a child, you pick up a stick and run it along railings, and get that lovely sound. We took a set of railings and we tuned them. So when you ran a stick along it, it played the Girl from Ipanema. Now, from our point of view, what was interesting, really, it was as much what it was as what it wasn't. I mean, you can still chain your bike to this. It still stops you getting into the park. But for that moment of joy, that childlike moment when you pick up a stick and run it on railings and suddenly, you've unlocked this hidden element, it was kind of a very important thing for us. It was the joy, it was exalted. So a lot of Greyworld stuff tried to take what was pre-existing really in spaces and giving it an opportunity to allow some kind of creativity. A funny thing really was that a lot of our early work was sound-based. My mum and dad are musicians, and really in my family, if you don't play some kind of musical instrument, you're not much used at home. That's the bottom line. It really wasn't important that you could play anything well. It was much more important that you just got stuck in, and so I think that was one of the ethos, yeah. So, and a lot of our stuff, this is a very non-sound project, but this was 6 bins and 5 benches in a town square. You could whistle to them and they would come over to you. On a Tuesday, the bins would line themselves up in a nice little line so that the bin man could come along and empty them out. A lot of our stuff, that was there for about 3 or 4 years. Again, sort of rather earlier in our career, we were doing stuff where, we were looking at embedding stuff in cities to create sound. This is a carpet in Dublin. We carpeted the bridge with a bright blue carpet. Tiny little sensors embedded in the bridge detected your motion and made sound. So when you walk across this carpet, you walk through crunchy snow, or you splosh through water, or you walk through crunchy leaves. It was a very simple thing. And the question is really, if you've got somebody for a millisecond, you really have to catch them quickly, and you have to get them interested very, very quickly, because like I say, they're not an art-going audience. On the other hand, if they don't want to involve or engage, that's got to be okay too. And one of the things we've seen done badly, I think, in urban spaces is that you're really stuck. You either involve yourself or look really sad and walk round. And so looking at ways in which people can navigate these spaces becomes very important. Just one quick really anecdote about this. We actually did this in the Greenwich Foot Tunnel. I'm from Greenwich. I was actually born in Greenwich. The Greenwich Foot Tunnel was the first place we did this installation, which is in 1999. And what we did was we carpeted a short section of the tunnel, the foot tunnel. Have you guys all been in the tunnel? Right. It's a wonderful space. I mean, crazy space. And we carpeted the middle section of it. And again, it made music when you walked on this carpet. Now, the tunnel, as you all know, is kind of like this shape. And the carpet went right up to the edges, far about 10 centimetres on each side. And every morning, a group of people would turn up, they'd be the first people in the tunnel, and they'd walk along, they'd find the carpet, they'd hit this ledge, and then one of them would try ever so hard to try and get down. And of course, sooner or later, he'd stand on the carpet, it would make a sound, there'd be a big goofy grin that would arrive up on their face, and everything was okay. You know, and so we kind of learned a lesson. It was really, you had to allow people, I'm really fucking up your TV filming thing, aren't I? Sorry. So that was kind of another little element. I'm just going to nip through a couple of other things that are non-soundy, because I want to show you really that actually intervention in urban space doesn't need to be necessarily complex. One of the things that we found, we did just a little while ago, I don't know if you guys saw it in Trafalgar Square, we made a giant sun. Did you guys see this in January? Yeah? Now, this is just a simple intervention. The idea here really is that on the worst day of the year, a Monday, 3 weeks from Christmas, you haven't been paid, it's raining, it's basically about as shit as you can get. We decided it might be a good idea to add a little bit of sunshine, and this is what happened. Now, this does have a point, I promise you.
Every time I look at you, I smile.
I smile.
It was ridiculous. It was 780,000 views of the video in 3 hours as it got posted. That's my dad. It's a 3-ton sun. Actually, let me just play this. It's a 3-ton sun. It's suspended on a 40-metre crane. It was quite insane. Now, I suppose the point here really is, and I'm going to show you some really complicated stuff in a minute. This is extremely complicated on one level, right? We've got the whole square for two days building this thing up. We've got a 200-ton crane. We've got planning permission. We've got the Transport for London saying that we're going to burn the eyeballs out of bus drivers. You know, we've got. I mean, it's about aircraft will crash into it, birds will stop migrating. It's going to be a complete disaster, right? And then, on the other hand, we just have this sun. Okay, and you'll see just at the minute as it gets built up, the effect is very, very simple. It's one that we just know it hits you right in the chest with the microphone on. So you can see I've kind of put. By the way, this isn't time lapse. We just drank a lot of coffee. So you can see in a minute we're kind of putting this thing together, and it's just. And that, when we switched it on, there was a palpable intake of breath in the square. It was moving. It was incredible, and it was the most simple installation we've ever made in terms of the effect. You know what I'm saying? And so one of the things we learn really here, and I think we've learned all the way through our career, is that you can have clever whiz-bang tools. You can sit in your bedroom and have the might of the internet behind you, but in the end, it's the most physical, tangible, friction-based things that really matter to us humans. It's we have this online social life now. And there are these wonderful tools in order for us to facilitate that. But a lot of the really successful things that we've done have been the ones which actually have facilitated some kind of social interaction between me and you. And for that moment, there's that magical thing. So I think all of these things, Laughs FM and Shazam and all of these things are fantastic tools, but they are nothing. They mean nothing without the human element to them. And I think that's really been one of the ethoses that we've been kind of experimenting with. I'm going to look that one up after this. Sound. Public space, ways of interacting. As I say, we haven't got very long to get you when you're working through a public space, so how do you go about these things? We're always looking for metaphors and roots in, ways that people can kind of intervene very, very quickly. And one of the ones that we've got a little bit obsessed with recently is the Clockwork Key, and specifically, this was the first iteration of this up in the north of England. This project was called Clockwork Forest. I mean, it became apparent why it's called the Clockwork Forest. There's a forest and there's a Clockwork Key. Incidentally, the last project was called Trafalgar Sun. The one before that was called Bridge. And the project before that was called Railings. You can kind of see the naming schedule we've got going at Greyworld. I know that there are artists who would have called this the meaningless emptiness, or volume 7 or something. But really, in the end, again, with public art, you've either You know, you've either got it or you haven't. And if you need a clever name, you're probably missing something out in the artwork. That's the way we feel. So with these projects here, this is a permanent work where these large clockwork keys have just sort of appeared, up again, permanently in the north of England, inviting you to turn them as a metaphor for interaction. There isn't a better one. We haven't found a better one yet. Turn it. Of course, there's a real clockwork mechanism that's embedded there. And when you let go of the key, tiny little hidden music boxes embedded in the canopy, in the floor, some of them behind you, some of them in front of you begin to play. Now, in the forest, at any one point, there's always someone or something moving through the forest. Sometimes you hear a little snippet of somebody else's trail as they move through the forest. Sometimes you hear it just behind you. And those little eddies of sound that come together and cross, I mean, the music that's being generated is actually all in the same key. So sometimes it's discordant, but it floats in and out. It makes a kind of story for us, a sort of sound story. I think what we really wanted to achieve with Clockwork Forest was the first chapter in a story that hasn't been written yet, you know? That you go through, you'd say, why are these keys here? And you would turn them, and something would happen, really. And that would be the beginning of it. And it was something that we've been investigating for a little while. This, on a kind of again, slight tangent, did you guys see the BT phone boxes that have been popping up around town? We did one. This is in the factory where they were all the artists were I don't know, you guys haven't, I'm not sure I'm allowed to show you even this, but this was all the boxes were all stored. And there's, some kind of guy there. But there's our box there. Again, it sprouted a key, but something interesting happens when you turn it. In fact, I might have the video. Yes, I do. This is in Trafalgar Square. Esther Ranson likes our box. She thinks we rock. So if you turn it, this one actually sprouts flowers. The flowers kind of come from the box. Now again, this is an experiment in interaction and the methods of what you can encourage people to play without feeling that they have to, you know. Now I'll kind of skip from there to one of the key principles really in all of our work, and Michaela mentioned it earlier with the stock exchange, but many of our pieces of work, again, as public art. Okay, what is public art? To many people, and for me, and for most of us, public art is a bronze man on a horse, right? He might have a sword, if you're lucky. Sometimes he's a polished rock in the middle of town. Again, if you're lucky, you get a hole sometimes through the rock. Nice little polished rock hole. Nice, very nice. Now, okay, there seems to be families of these rocks. In fact, most of the artists don't sign the rocks or mention who they are because maybe they're embarrassed, I don't know. Often the bronze horsey ones are written in Latin. Again, another clever way by the artist to not be connected with the work. Possibly, don't know. Who knows? Who reads Latin? I don't know. Who's the guy on the horse? No idea. Why is he in town? No idea. Why is it written in Latin? Still no idea. No idea at all. That is public art for me, set at a physical distance. I can't get on the horse, you know. I can't play with the guy. I want to ride the horse. I want to sit on a rock. I can't do any of those things. But more importantly and more fundamentally, Greyworld stuff, really, I mean, from where I look at it, that work is set at a sort of, not just a physical distance, but a psychological distance, because it seems to represent somebody that I don't know. It's a top-down idea. There's obviously some important event happening. I've got no connection, again, I don't read Latin. So our public art, we try to approach that differently. First of all, we try to put people at the centre of the work. And secondly, we try to use generative tools to keep the work fresh. And again, things like Last.fm and Shazam and these projects are very, very interesting for us because of the ways that they manipulate and look at your likes and dislikes, and they recommend things. The algorithms they use are very interesting. If you apply those algorithms to the generation of content, that's when it gets really interesting from our point of view, because generatively you can create a piece of music which is recognisably the same piece of music, but which is different every time you listen to it. That gets very, very interesting. How am I doing for time? So, for example, here's something which is a non-sound version of it, then I'll play you a sound version. This is the source at the London Stock Exchange, which Michaela mentioned. We were commissioned by the London Stock Exchange to create a sculpture which would open the market every morning. They ummed and ahed and didn't really know whether or not they wanted to go ahead with it. This is the video that we used to explain to them. Would you guys, when you've seen this, nod your head or shake your head based on whether or not you understand what it is? Because these inscrutable bankers, very, very difficult to know whether they liked it or not. It's basically lots of balls on cables, like abacuses. Abaci? Well. And each of these balls can move up and down on its cables, right? So you can see in our render here. So imagine each one of these balls can move up and down the cables, which means if you send the balls to any height you want in the atrium, you can make any shape you want. It's a 3D sculpture of infinite nod heads, shake heads. It's not that difficult, is it? But we went in there with footballs, we went in there with like marbles, conkers, we were like, look, balls, abaci, abacuses, whatever. Anyway, but you can see here what we thought was going to be the really cool thing, which was the noise, you know, of actually it wasn't. It tended to be the states that came out of it. So you can see here. Hang on, it'll take us time. And the point is that the states that were encoded in it, which in this case, you'll see kind of a little boring one. Because all art has to be a bit boring sometimes. Like here, look, so you can see this is just, you see these very ordinary flat planes that are coming out of it. Now that could have been encoded in as part of its library, but other things, like you see these balls being left behind? Now why, I ask you? Because something is happening, emerging from the noise of the net. And it says the word London. Okay, now, we didn't program that in. We created a sculpture which would go online, find what was happening in the news, and use that information and create newness out of it. And so we gave them a generative sculpture that didn't have a form until it was connected to other social networks, human beings, the news, and what have you. And the same is true of a lot of the sound things that we've done. Things like the bridge, for example, that creates sound as you walk across it, but we're not playing pre-recorded sounds from A to B to C. We're actually generating newness based on what's happening at that particular point of the day and how you're engaging with it. This is another one. This is a permanent work in the north of England in 5 bus stops. So these are slightly strange bus stops, I'll grant you. This got a giant pole here with a fan on the top to generate heat. So not that we need it today, but it will generate heat to generate electricity so that you could heat your bum on the seats inside the bus stops. Now, the artwork we made in this was quite interesting. Tiny little hidden camera in the back wall of the bus stop looks at you, and as you walk through it, you hear a female voice, and she sings a song that's based on the colours of the clothes that you're wearing. So she gets really obsessed with some particular colours. She's seen a lot of yellow, but she's really wanting to see a bit of green. And then, so she's a little generative engine. She's got a character and a personality, and after a while, people begin to, well, emote towards the bus stop. You know, one of the true stories about this one is that a guy and a girl used to meet at the bus stop to go to school together. Let's meet at the singing bus stop, the one that's always got an opinion on what clothes we're wearing. And they started seeing each other, and 6 months later he proposed to her at the bus stop. And there was this wonderful article in the local newspaper about how who would propose in a bus stop? But sometimes through these interventions, and I think this is really, I suppose, if there's a conclusion to what I'm saying, sometimes through these interventions themselves, what is really just a place can become a space, can become a location, can really have some kind of connection to us and essentially other people. And that really is what underpins all of the things that we're interested about, and all of the successful things I think that the other speakers are going to talk about. That is the human element, the friction, the element that really joins those two things together, are the things that will make these things live or die. I hope you've enjoyed our work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Does anybody have any questions they want to throw at Andrew now?
Gentleman at the back, sir.
More just a point, maybe just to reassure you, you're not an idiot. There's no defining plural of either.
Oh,
you've Googled
thanks,
it.
Man. Thanks, man. Oh, yeah, listen, you can have a free book. I actually bought some books. Do you want a book? I'll give you a book at the end. Go on. Any more questions? Yeah, mate.
Do you think of yourselves as a business?
Well, I tell you, here's the thing, a good question, right? Any artist that tells you that he's not a business is an idiot, right? Artists have always had to eat, and that somehow or other, in the 18th century, it became trendy, it became important for an artist to be starving and living in a garret for him to have quality. I don't know how this happened, right? It didn't need to be like that at all, but for some reason, it sort of transpired this way. We need to bring in money so we can make the works that we want to make. And we're not ashamed of it, and we're very, very proud of the fact that we can actually survive by making the work we do. There's 4 of us, incidentally. Yeah.
So in the stock exchange example, did you stand there and sell that to them, or do they come to you and say, do something?
There's an irony really about public art. I mean, in fact, maybe about all of the performing arts, and that is that they pay you to do something in public that advertises yourself. And assuming that you do something that people like, they begin to ask you to come back again. And it's a wonderful little thing, unless of course you fuck up massively, in which case you never work again. So I mean, you know. Anybody else? Yeah.
Have you ever had a piece that broke in a fantastic way?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
You were thinking that wasn't exactly.
I mean, have I got loads to show you?
You know, the Queen opened the source by pressing one button. We didn't want to. You didn't want to put anything complicated on there. But I mean, that very nearly.
Well, the problem was that the Queen is really, really little. Like, and nobody tells you this. I mean, like tiny, really little. And we were standing. Imagine this room twice as big, and we're standing up there. Do you want to see? Hang on, I don't think I showed you this. Here, look, I'll show you how short she is. Check this out.
After 2 centuries of trading at the same site in the City of London, the stock exchange is moving to a striking new home next to St Paul's Cathedral.
Really likes our
Queen
work.
opened the building today, with all eyes on the rather beguiling work of art which forms the centrepiece of the new stock exchange.
We're
as June
beguiling.
Kelly
Check the very scared-looking man over here.
Put your hand on this ball.
Now look at her. Look, she's like weenie like this.
It was perhaps one of the most unusual
she's
invitations the Queen has ever
I've heard
received.
every ball joke
She
you can
pressed
possibly
one
imagine.
electronic ball, and more than 700
My balls were on
others
TV
suspended
every
on metal
day for
cables
6
and
years.
began to move. The balls are the centrepiece and talking point of the new
Yes,
stock exchange
my balls
building.
are the talking points, and have been actually for quite some time. In fact, at the end of the day, when my balls are resting for the night,
stock market.
let me just show you this.
Point for months.
Let me just show you.
Building.
Head of competition.
We're building his
And
balls
it's
in 2
dramatically
halves.
transformed the
Actually,
way
they
people
have
actually
prototypes of it.
So exactly, it was very stressful. When she
Loads
walked,
of
hang on.
business tonight
Can
on
you
the
turn
New
it up a
York
bit?
Stock Exchange. So while New York has its bell, in London it will be the balls which will signify the start and,
And here's
end
the
of trading.
punchline.
Well, it's several hours since trading ceased, and the balls are now resting for the night. The arrow indicates that the market
Absolutely.
closed up
They couldn't
today.
get away with it.
This
They
has
had to,
truly
because they just
been
had
a
to give it. Anyway, the
significant
point
day for the
is
stock
that when the
exchange.
Queen
A
walked
whole
in
new
to
era
the,
for
to the,
City
to the
of
building to
London.
walk up the stairs and press the
June
button,
Kelly, BBC
we were all
News
standing
and
there
Stock
waiting for her,
Exchange.
and someone was like, shit, she's tiny. And the button would have been about here. And I'm not making a word of this up. She was walking in and they were like, that's not going to work. Get a box. So one of the security guards kind of steams off around the corner and finds a box. And what you can't see in that video is that she walks up to it and then she stands up on this box and then she presses the button. Otherwise, it would have been the world's most humiliating thing ever. 65 million people watched that opening. So yeah, and the Queen was where exactly? She's gonna... Anyway, so we've had a few mistakes, but you kind of have to just roll with them. Any more questions?
Guys,
Cool.
we'll catch Andrew.
Thank you very
later.
much. Cheers.